So it's, yeah, sorry. Is Roni there?
You don't want to, honestly,
Just a one.
yeah, you don't want to be rude.
Blind.
Turn on your temperature. She's okay. Okay.
Okay, so, roll call. Roni is not here yet, but he might be joining us online. Dewan is online. Dominic's in the room. Tom's here. We also have joining us tonight, Kevin, who is our consultant, Kevin Wood. Adam Sanchez is here from ITS, and Chief Franklin and Doreen are here. So I'm happy that we can all be here to discuss the week's happening or the month's happenings. Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself again and
Sure.
kind of give us a report on, how we've been working together and what we've been.
Sure, absolutely. Kevin Wood, company name Parking and Mobility Consultants. And pleasure to be here. I have met some of the staff and it's been great. We met by Zoom with the chief. I met with DPW head today. And of course, we've been talking this entire month. And my role, I believe, is probably what you may have in the future, which is a parking administrator. That's yet to be determined, but my history and my experience is rooted right in what you're in right now, which is the visioning and the planning for the future of parking in the city of Hudson. My experience relates to policy, relates certainly to hardware, meters, pay by cell, enforcement, every aspect of what you're going through. At this point, I've done. So I'm glad to be part of the team, so to speak. I think you remember I addressed this board or council committee, if you will, in May. So glad to be back.
So last time we met, we talked about parking on Sundays. And I think that because our enforcement guys need a break on Sundays, that we should keep it as it is now, if that's okay with everybody, unless you guys have other ideas, and keep parking free on Sunday.
For now.
Okay, so I think that's the way that should stay for now. I also, along with Margaret Morris, met with some of the county supervisors. They would like permits for half price for in front of 11 Warren Street. And my position was that they created the problem of not having any parking for their employees or adequate parking for their employees. So I gave them a little bit of pushback and said that I would come to you guys and see what your feeling was about it. The other thing that I countered with was that they could take on the cost of paving and lining the gravel lot that is off the Ferry Street Bridge, because we're obviously going to need more parking for the people who will be coming to the election board, who will be coming to use the other services there, the public defender, the parole board, etc. So they weren't really amenable to that. But I did reiterate it in an email, saying, that even if we were to give them these parking permits, it only solves one problem. It solves the problem of their employees having parking. They are willing to give us all of the money for parking upfront every year. And by our calculations, when we were sitting there talking, the number was about $29,000.
What about the negotiating parking kiosks in their parking lots?
I brought that up. They said, well, we already allow you to park there on weekends. So why are you asking us? And then I said, because we'd like to meter them. And their response was, absolutely not. If you're going to meter them, then we want the money, or we want part of it.
So what they want, money or what?
They want the income from the parking lots that they own on Columbia Street if we were to put a kiosk there for weekend parking.
Oh,
So how do you feel about all this?
mhm.
Well, do the numbers, give them the portion of what we're gonna, get back in permit, so everything's flush. I don't know. Who's gonna make more money?
We should be making more money,
Right.
Dominic.
Yeah, we're doing all the work in terms of,
Yes.
you're paying for
I'm
the
not
kiosks.
happy with giving them permits.
I don't know.
Yeah, why? What are we getting in return?
We're getting nothing.
Nothing.
We're getting a headache.
Right.
We're getting a huge headache.
Right.
Fine, and I think that what's gonna happen is the people that are business owners in the city are gonna be upset about this as well, because they're gonna feel the need to wanna have parking permits as well.
I agree. So if you'd wait until the end and then you can, if you can remember your questions. I know it's hard when you're in this kind of atmosphere to hold back because it's a top of mind. So, but if you could wait till the end, that'd be great.
So they're talking about parking for just their county
Their
employees,
employees,
their personal cars,
their personal.
who can use it anytime, even after hours, without us knowing, technically.
Well, after hours, it won't matter because we're not gonna be charging for parking after 5.
No, I'm talking about after work, their work hours, they can come on a Saturday, right, and park,
Well,
either spot.
no, because.
Oh, it's only gonna be those spots.
They should get a ticket for sure. It would only be the reserved spots that would be in front of 11 Warren. And I think I should go down there and count. We were walking around today and I didn't do that, but I should. It's 10 to 14 spaces in front of there. I
I think we should be tough with them. I don't really, they screwed us over with this project. So let's, besides, it takes,
the only worry that I have is that the employees that don't have space will go to Allen or Union Street and park.
I think they're
How
gonna do
many,
that.
There's going to be approximately 45, I think, employees, and there are only 30 spaces in their lot. And I think 2 or 3 of those are reserved for handicap. So even if we give them what's in front of 11 Warren,
Eleven,
there's
yeah.
going to be an issue. Someone's gonna get left out.
and how many permit they use currently from us?
Hundreds, I think. Do you know, Dory? They have free parking on Columbia Street already.
Was the proposed use year round or just a particular part of the year?
No, year round.
Year round.
Mhm.
So, $29,000 is an
That's,
offer.
that was what they said they would pay upfront per year.
And so do we go do that division to divide the 29,000 divided by the spaces? To compare that,
I can do the math again and send it to everyone,
Please.
but it's, I just wanted to get a feeling of how you guys felt about it. I think it's absurd.
I don't see what you can, I mean,
It is,
Even
it
if
is
we-
absurd.
oh, sorry, go ahead, go on.
No, I say it is absurd. I mean,
I think we should charge them permit parking on every parking spot, then not citywide. Right, if they want, why just that area? Right, if they want to do that, then every parking spot, why are they getting free? Right, let them be permit parking on all the spots they use now, they're free. If they're saying they want a piece of our pie, if we do weekend parking, why are we not getting the pie?
Right,
Oh.
that they're already getting for free on
Right.
Columbia Street.
Right.
Who did you talk with, man? What's his name? Ron Knott?
Ron Knott was there, Goosey, Ligonia, Matt Morrell, and two others, and the treasurer.
This was their, meeting of their,
No, it was like they were meeting with lots of people and they hurried us out after we talked.
what was the committee called?
I don't think it was a committee.
Okay.
It was just, I wasn't aware of a committee
Yeah,
name.
because they have, I forget what it's called, but they have a committee that deals with things like parking and selling buildings and all that stuff.
I don't know, but the treasurer was there, so,
Their turn.
yes.
Space utilization or something. I think.
Oh, yeah, maybe you're correct. Space utilization
Yeah,
committee.
that's, okay.
That seems correct, because I'd met with them before Tom was there. Okay, so now I know the feeling.
How did it come about that they made a proposal? I don't quite understand
I don't know.
that. Oh. Did Margaret talk to them about it or something?
I guess they reached out to Margaret, and then Margaret was like, well, the lead on the parking committee is Jenny, and she should be here. And they wouldn't get back to her on whether I could come or not. And finally, I got a last minute invitation and went,
Okay.
because it's really close to my house.
Yeah.
I think we just need more negotiation. I think
Okay.
if they want to negotiate, even if you give us one parking lot, one, whatever, right? We need to negotiate this because we're taking these hits and taking these losses.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, so today we also, well, I sent out a survey to residents and to the business community. We've started to get responses. And one thing that's come up is something that Kevin and Adam and I discussed today, is that what we were calling preferred parker, the program, the way it is, you would have to go to the kiosk and make your initial payment. What we discussed today is that maybe there's a way that you don't ever have to touch the kiosk, so that it makes it easier for people with mobility issues.
Well, like people who get their, whatever it's called, that thing that they used to get, right? Still have
A
to go.
black card?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
Still have to go somewhere to get it.
right.
So.
But we can avoid the whole thing.
I understand,
Yeah.
but why can't these people then go to our new place in the police department to get registered in some fashion?
Well, we don't even have to do that, Tom.
Oh, you're
It
saying
could be
that-
all digital.
Okay,
We could have a form. We could have a form that they can fill out digitally,
okay.
and then we enter it into Iris, which is the system that is housing all of
I'm
our.
sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you said they still would have to come, and I was just. trying to-
No,
Okay.
no, we're trying to find a way that you just don't have to do it at all.
Excellent.
Like, you fill out an online form, Doreen takes that information, she goes into Iris and she goes bing, bing, bing. And then the actual license plate becomes your,
Right, and you can do that from home.
yeah,
Perfect.
Kevin.
Yeah. And step in when
Adam.
necessary. The alternatives to going to the kiosk would be twofold. It would be a text to park or scan to park
Mhm.
system, which would, as we just learned, not allow preferred pricing,
Right,
right? However, the second way to do this is through, you're already using UP Safety, right? Okay, through UP Safety, there's a permitting module, which someone could sit at home on a phone and very easily input their information, and that somebody in the office, Doreen in this case possibly, right, would confirm that information, and then immediately when that's confirmed, that becomes whatever you want it to be. That could be a category of permit that this organization, this city decides. So that would be the two ways, either on demand
mhm,
through the text to park, or being a specialized permitted parking. And you could have any category of
The
permit.
customer portal, where, yeah, it just takes one step out of doing
Yes.
the 10. So she doesn't have the input, the information, she just verifies.
So one thing, in the research I've done too, is for the kiosks too, is that they've done some handicap parking closer to the kiosks. So
Yeah.
those who can't use that system, say they're just using money or whatever, that they can park closer to the kiosks with their tag in the parking, so it's closer. That might be something we can scatter along, is providing handicap parking on tour. It's just another, I think with the DOJ stuff, right?
Mhm.
We don't want this, we have an opportunity now to start, to better fresh, rather than getting a complaint. We
Right.
install these things, but didn't accommodate certain things.
We could do all of these things.
Right.
Which I think could be great.
Sure.
All right.
So not necessarily putting this out as policy or formal policy, but I have seen municipalities that make anybody with a valid handicap placard parks in any space, and that space becomes a
Yeah.
handicap space,
Yeah.
period, they're there. Now, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't have the same policy set in place. For example, yes, you're handicapped, you may not be paying, but you should still stay within a 2-hour period of parking. Right, so that can be enforced.
How do you guys feel about for people with mobility issues, disabilities of all kinds, having it be, we take off that 2-hour limitation or the limited, the max time being 2 hours?
So if you were asking me my opinion,
Yeah.
I think if you're giving free parking for handicap parkers, that in order to have the turnover that you're after for the business community, that 2 hours should be adhered to. That would be my opinion. That's completely up for discussion. But I just think that policy on Main Street specifically is meant for turnover, and you ensure that by having that.
Because many people are residents of Warren Street and, all of those shops that we walked by today,
Mhm.
they all have apartments on top of them.
Right.
Or they're freestanding homes that are homes, so they're residents. So I'm just trying to find a way that it makes it a little bit easier for someone, especially with a mobility issue, that they can stay in their spot.
But I think it goes hand in hand with the process, right? I think if you have, like Kevin said, the placard, you fill the paperwork out, right?
Mhm.
And somewhere there's got to be a caveat, though, when you fill this out, that if somehow this is being abused, right?
Mm.
Your son's using it, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
then there's got to be a consequence
Yeah,
to that,
absolutely.
Mhm.
right? So,
Proving that though would be very difficult, especially, we've got only 4 parking enforcement guys, only 2 of them work at a time. Trying to catch someone using a permit incorrectly or,
do you know who's gonna tell? Is their neighbors,
No,
right? Their neighbors,
But-
are gonna-
Jennifer,
everyone's at City Hall.
yes, Dawn?
yeah, I know we have only 4 enforcement, but you should have some kind of consequences on the thing. So if we get caught, then they should get punished, like we should
No,
think
of
about,
course.
yeah.
Yeah, of course. That's not what I'm saying. It's just proving that someone's done something wrong is going to be more difficult because there's only so many enforcement people.
And it could be subjective, I get that.
Yeah, and it's also
It could be-
subjective.
But we still should make clear it's punishable.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
that would be, when they go to the portal to fill out the paperwork, that should be on the paperwork. Hey, if you abuse this, your privilege is taken.
Have you been able to identify how many people this would apply to on Warren Street? I know there's that one.
How many what?
How many people it would apply to who live on Warren Street? I know you've heard from one person.
There were 2 other people that came to one of our parking meetings. And they were both concerned about the
Oh, I
same
know.
thing. Yes,
And we're also talking about visitors too then.
Well, we should- we should-
but they would not get this. They wouldn't, if you're visiting, you don't get this privilege.
No, but you get to park closer to the handicap
To
parking.
the kiosk,
To
yeah.
kiosk, yeah, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So that's one thing we talked about. We're gonna talk about a schedule for installation of phase 1 and phase 2. Oh,
Jack, Jenny, can I just go back one?
Yeah,
I think how we should classify this though, right, is, along with that, and I don't know, Kevin, if you come across, is that, basically in writing, asking for a reasonable accommodation, right? So everything's in writing. So then you get supportive documentation from a doctor, whatever.
Okay,
It's called reasonable accommodation, right?
okay,
So then there's a process.
okay,
For, I mean, if they have the disability tag, that's one thing, but if they don't have a tag, right? But they're at a level that they need an accommodation, right? One of the accommodations could be, using the digital, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
Right? So,
everyone's gonna be able to do that.
right.
Yeah.
But my thing is though, right? I have to go back to a senior citizen. If my dad was alive and was driving, right? He's not using digital. He's gonna have to somehow have a reasonable accommodation. And if you require reasonable accommodation, ABC, you can do ABC. Whether that's coming to see Doreen in person, whatever that is, to make sure that there's a segment that we're offering for those who aren't technically savvy. We can't say someone, well,
The kiosk itself, you can use whatever you want. It's coins, it's paper money, you can,
If someone parked right outside this door and they had a legitimate handicap placard, what is the policy now in terms of overstaying meter time?
chief,
I wouldn't necessarily say it's policy in the charter that there is that 2-hour time limit. So that can be enforced every 2 hours.
Right.
Can be.
And does that handicap person pay for parking right now?
yes,
And
They're
yes,
asked to pay for parking. So my recommendation was a step above. Again, it's just a suggestion, and what I see in other municipalities, there would be no payment for parking, but they would adhere to the policy rule. If you have a better word, let me know, to only stay that parking, because above all, we want to change the behavior on Main Street such that businesses, and everybody's a stakeholder in parking, you guys know that, right? Everybody has some opinion about parking, I get that. But I think everybody can agree that Main Street is the most convenient parking, and it's normally reserved for turnover. It should be encouraged to have turnover.
so you just say basically, free parking for your first 2 hours, and then
Correct.
whatever after, right, would be either a consequence like you have to pay, right?
Yeah, if you're chalking, and I'll just use that word now, just if that car, no matter what type of car that is or who parked there, the 2 hours is stringently the 2 hours.
Right.
we also today talked about, you have a 2-hour max, but if you did want to stay over the 2-hour max, then you pay double
And that's for everyone.
for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if it's free, then you pay,
Yeah.
$1.
Right.
If it's.
As long as whatever you do, it's universal.
Oh, yeah, of course.
That's it, yeah.
Right, so and that would, I'll defer to Adam on this. So that person wouldn't be checking in for free. They wouldn't come to a meter and say, hi, I'm parking for free. So then that would have to be monitored from the beginning, just like any other time parking on behalf of the police department.
Right, so they would have to actually text if they can't get to the kiosk. They would have to use the text to pay
Yes.
so that they would know
Yes.
that I am in this spot.
Yes.
It is free for me. And if I intend to stay longer, then
Correct.
I pay.
But when everything is said and done, it's going to be pretty convenient to make a transaction, either through a kiosk or through a sign. Or quite honestly, the text to pay, you can be in your car, it could be raining out and you're paying for parking. So you don't have to touch anything or scan anything.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't think people realize that they can do that from anywhere. They could be, out of town and invoke a parking session.
yeah, via their phone, that's it.
Thank you, Jim.
Schedule. So installation of phase 1 and phase 2, I think, and that is Lower Warren, Upper Warren, where there is no kiosk or meter now. Plus the Union Street, short-term parking lot. And there's also, I don't know if anybody realizes this, but as I was driving around today, there are a lot of Union Street meters. Are they in working order? Are they?
Yeah.
Okay, so we also need kiosks there. So for phase 1 and phase 2, we were thinking about the end of April. Does that sound good? And then we were going to, no?
No, I just had a question.
Yeah.
I did meet with Tracy and Kim earlier today,
Okay,
and they did have a concern because Amtrak lot is going to be replaced as well.
yes,
Is that gonna be in phase 1?
yes.
Okay. That was the concern there because of the different.
Yeah,
So,
we're doing, phase 1 is the Amtrak lot, the way
Okay.
that I had it written. And phase 2 would be Upper and Lower Warren plus Union Street lot. And then, so, yeah, where things are kind of falling apart or don't exist, they're going to happen. So that'll happen at the end of the month, along with training for Dory. And that will happen with Chris Wyatt, who is from ITS,
Or Antoine.
or Antoine. Chris was here today as well, and he got to see the whole situation, so that's good. We also have to think about signage. We have to get all of that pulled together for phase 1 and phase 2. I'm going to be working with Kevin on this because I know our DPW cannot pull this off in time. So Kevin's company does do signage, so we can work directly with Kevin on that. And I'll have numbers. Once we decide what's actually happening, I'll have that next month.
Okay.
We also have, we're planning on putting together a fact sheet or a pamphlet for online and for distribution, to different businesses around town so that everybody knows what's going on. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, and it's a suggestion that came after I put out the surveys to the business community. One person mentioned, we never know what's going on. There is the hub, and then you see things on social media and blah, 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 but we don't really know what's going on. And I agree. I was like, well, we should maybe think about putting a newsletter together as a common council or as City Hall and, listing all of our newest, latest, greatest accomplishments or not so great accomplishments or whatever.
You're speaking particularly for parking?
Not for just parking,
That's okay.
but everyone is very confused about what's going on with parking and, partially because we haven't made all the decisions yet. And this is going to be everybody's going to have to be kind of patient while we transition into this because, all of these things, there are going to be bugs and we got to work them out. So, yeah, so that's one thing.
So we can develop along those lines, and it could start pretty immediately,
Yeah.
an FAQ.
Yeah,
so as we go and just keep updating that.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And we can put that on the parking bureau's website. We could do, pamphlets or flyers or whatever, just so that people know what's happening. We have to think about ordering, phase 3 kiosks, just kind of getting our ducks in a row, knowing how many we need. We kind of discussed that today. We have a running list. I think there are things on that list which either need to be updated or added to. I think the Union Street, there's not, they weren't put on any list, I don't think. But I've got to look at what he's got as.
Yeah, I was gonna do that.
Okay. Our office, our parking bureau office is done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we're ready for humans. I was gonna ask, I know we need a resolution, to change, or a law to change the, parking fees.
Right.
We also need to change the code to read what is short-term parking,
Okay.
what is long-term parking. Do we also have to have a resolution for next meeting just about implementing phase 1 and 2 of parking? Just putting in the kiosks? Do we have to have that?
No, 'cause that's all done, and that's all been
It's
approved.
finished.
No, just for the prices. We're looking
Just
at
for
it.
pricing.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're not going to change pricing until phase 3 when
Probably. I don't
Kevin
know.
says no.
I don't know.
Your rates are very reasonable, and even with the proposed increase, they're very reasonable. So I don't want to be a bad guy here. I don't think that's what this is about, but fees have to be such that it does encourage turnover. Some would argue that it should be much more. I think some of your neighbors are $3 and $4 an hour. Universities are $5. I'm not saying we need to go there, but as you're putting in this new equipment, it's an investment. I would say that the time to do it would be when the new equipment is put in.
But then we have an inequity.
Because of,
Because-
because there's meters on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that could be, that by resolution, that could be done by zone. That's not the end of the world. It's not such a big difference, but it's kind of gets you into
Like
the
a fee
future. Yeah, exactly. It's very common that different parts of the city would have different fees.
Yeah, we do that now with the parking, right?
Right.
Parking lots are
Mhm.
lower,
Mhm.
than, right? To encourage people to park in the parking lot rather than on the street. Right, because we make it a little lower.
Right. What we're speaking about in terms of the programming that goes in, as
Yes.
Adam's team puts in,
Right, yeah.
it's up for discussion, it's up for a decision.
I agree with Kevin.
There you go.
Yeah, we should, yeah, increase the price. Yeah.
I think Chief Franklin has a thought.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I'm not sure if anybody knows, but the meters can be changed electronically. The price on the meters can be changed electronically.
Yeah.
They just have to be scanned. So if you're worried about inequities and want to make it consistent.
Yes.
Saying you do, saying if you want to, it can be done.
But it's still gotta be paid by quarters. That's the problem.
That's the issue. That's always been the issue,
Yes.
is that, if we raise everything,
4 quarters instead of.
you're gonna need 8 quarters for your 2 hours or whatever. It's,
So you're, Kevin, you're suggesting maybe keep the meters at $1
100%.
and then move the other kiosks to high.
Definitely. And then by resolution, call it a zone, and that zone would actually be attributable to the programming and the kiosk phase 1. Your phase 1 would be a zone. And it would be the way to do it, I think.
Adam, if I sit down and I get out a map of Hudson and I kind of lay out for you, hey, I think this should be zone 1, this should be zone 2, this should be zone 3, you guys can program it.
Yes.
to that? Okay, cool. So that's something that you and I can work on together.
And we will work on the resolution.
Okay,
Yep, very cool, yeah.
it has to happen like now.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, you want a special meeting for it, or is it gonna wait?
well, we can, as long as the resolution is done by the informal meeting, yeah, but, so we have to start working on it. But I really don't think we should raise prices until phase 3, but that's just me. Kevin totally disagrees. Let's get a show of hands. I mean, seriously.
I don't have, I literally don't have a vote here, but I have to put out
Your
my
opinion
opinion. That's,
is,
yeah.
I'll tell you why I like it, because it
You like it?
prepares people for what the future is.
I like it too.
Dewan likes it. Dominic, how do you feel?
I think since we're doing in phases, makes sense, right? Phase
Yeah.
1, if it's gonna be higher, right? So
So the people who have
It's
never
preparing.
had to pay for parking now pay double what everyone else pays.
Yeah, well, if they park in, that's fine.
Catch up.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it, but the other way of looking at it is.
I'm telling you what I would feel if I
I'm
were a
also gonna
resident
say,
of Lower Warren.
But you're not a resident. I mean, the people, for example, on, I don't know, call Upper Ward are not residents of parking. I see it every day. That there, a lot of people work at the hospital and every other place, they're not residents. And maybe that's truer down at that end, but I'm not sure it is either, because there's not a lot of parking yet in that part of the city.
There are, at
I know it's
least-
gotten more and more, but.
there are residents that live in houses there,
Yeah.
and there's also a couple of apartment buildings.
Yeah, I get it.
I don't know. I'm outvoted on this one. Okay. We can continue this discussion.
Just remember that, no one has a claim to city property, is basically the way to look at it. I mean, how parking theorists look at it. It's, just because you rented a building that didn't provide you parking, doesn't mean that gives you a claim to have a space out front of it. I know that sounds brutal, but it's actually,
But what if you have a mobility issue?
well, we've already talked about that. I mean,
So
that's-
Yeah, it's
they're getting,
separate.
they're
Yeah.
getting a
Yeah.
whole different deal
Yeah.
anyway. Okay, fine. All right. PCI compliance. Are we compliant? Or do we need to go through some other hoop before we get this thing up and running?
So that comes down to, and I'm not sure I did get this answer, who is the proposed merchant of record for tap to park?
I think it's
Do you know, Adam?
No, I don't.
It's-
And
Hard Connect.
No,
And
what I mean is revenue attributed and put in the city's bank account, or is it put in a third party's bank account before it goes into ultimately your bank account?
Good question.
usually,
Heather would know that.
So one way this will work is you take credit cards for something here, right?
Yes.
Like,
don't.
for, what do you take credit cards for so far?
Taxes.
Taxes. So that credit card processor could be the processor that works in the machines.
yeah. The hardware itself is PCI compliant, because we're using
Right off the
EMV
bat.
readers.
Yep.
And the contactless, so
But
that's PCI.
I got a whole litany of other paperwork
Right.
from Card Connect that
So-
said I needed to prove, or we need to prove.
So
PCI
here's the answer on that. That's done through, I think it's even a federal mandate. That paperwork has to come through
Yeah,
because of Homeland Security. I think it falls under, to be
Yes.
honest.
yeah.
So what Adam's saying is correct. You're literally going to go through this, or I'll go through this with you. You're going to be answering questions that are just completely obvious. And because that machine is already PCI compliant and the EV that he was speaking of, it's automatically going to be approved. If you were taking cards at City Hall for parking, that would be different. So now you're physically handling the card.
Uh-huh,
Are you writing that number down? Are you storing that card somewhere? That's what they're concerned with.
okay.
There's no concern here at all. This is going through the air and they need to know that. They'll answer that in the paperwork
Okay.
and that will be approved.
All right, I'm gonna go back, find those emails and
Yep.
send them to you.
There's only a couple of clearinghouses you can use with the contact list. And
That's right.
Did Rita go over that with you?
No.
No.
Kevin, I'm not, Connor? I got emails. I've never talked with anyone about it.
Okay.
I've just gotten emails saying, here's the paperwork, or you can do it this way and blah, blah, blah.
You're gonna find it's lengthy, it's 50 to 75 questions, but you're just going through the process. That piece of hardware is already PCI compliant. There's no other time that you're going to be intercepting somebody's credit card through this process.
What if we are doing something that is a permit? Like we're entering something in Iris from the back end and we're permitting someone.
Right, so the permits we were speaking about before through the UP safety system.
Yep.
They are the merchant of record.
Oh, okay,
Already.
so then it's
You're getting a net check from them. You'd be getting a net proceed from them, so that PCI compliance is completely on them.
on.
On UP safety and the
Up
permit.
up
Yep.
safety, okay.
Yep.
All right. I'm getting paperwork. Okay, let's talk about future. I mentioned to you that I brought up to the Columbia County supervisors that, you know, we are thinking about paving this lot. I don't know that we're gonna have enough money left over from what we had budgeted originally to do that. So the one thing that I would really like to see happen is the lot on Warren Street. That's short-term lot, one of them, the one next to Moto, is a disaster.
Mhm.
It's underutilized because people don't want to wreck their cars going in there. I'd really like to see that fixed because we're putting in all of this effort to this project and
Yeah.
that is a mess. It's embarrassing.
I think the best thing to do is ask Rob what it would cost
Okay.
to upgrade that lot.
We had also talked about at one point lining the lot at the Chamber of Commerce and making that a short-term lot as well.
Hmm.
I need to really look at how many spaces there are there. I mean, that could be helpful to some of the residents there if they,
It could, because the chamber, I think, has maximum 4 employees.
okay,
And HDC barely uses upstairs.
yeah,
Yeah, so I think it's worth looking into, because there's probably at least a dozen spaces if not more.
okay. All right, so I'll look into that. I'll go into the Chamber of Commerce and ask how many humans work there.
Well, our own Gary works there.
Yeah, he does. But I think we asked him at one point, how many people work there? And he couldn't give me an answer, so I'm gonna ask.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
I just want to bring something up. Now, since you're talking about the lots, county versus city, doesn't the city own the lot adjacent to 325, the one lot, the bigger lot on Columbia Street that they use? I believe if you look at the tax map that the city has.
But we also give them
But I don't
free
know what the-
permits
I
for
don't know
that
what
lot.
the contract is. I guess what I'm
Really?
going back to what precludes us from metering it.
Yeah, you're talking about the one right next to their building?
Yeah, if you're looking at 325 in Columbia,
Yeah.
the big one on the left, I believe
Really?
belongs to the
The
south.
south side.
Yes. And the other two,
Opposite of the corner?
across
325?
from 302. Like, so not
Oh,
the
I
one
see.
directly across from there, right?
Oh, wait a
Not the
second.
one adjacent right directly to Third Street, the other one.
Okay.
To where the old junkyard used to be.
What's the middle of this lot?
Yes.
That's a good question.
There's,
I'll check. Oh, sure. What's that?
I think this has to do with what the lot she's talking about, but we've kind of lost control of it in a way. Because
I just wanted to bring it up since we were talking about those.
yeah, no, I think it's a great idea.
Parking.
Columbia Street. Okay. All right. That's kind of all that I had. Any more,
You
Kevin?
know, some of the items that came up before was lining, the spaces that are not lined yet and or relining on Warren. And what was the positives and negatives of lining or not lining?
Two schools of thought, as you can
That's
imagine.
what I thought. Yeah.
One of the council members was in favor of not lining, and I thought, give it a shot in the new spots, in the new.
Yeah.
areas, And see if it works. I don't know, what, you really think it's a bad idea?
You know, I mean, you know, you think of inventory, right? These are assets of the city, every space. So in that regard, you know, I like to even break it down and say, this space is worth this much to the
Yeah.
city, a visit.
Great.
And you're able to do that, doing that. If there was, you know, if you had large trucks always parking there might be a reason for doing that, but.
I see your point, and I think, now I'm thinking more about it, it would be a way of alerting the people who are gonna start parking there from, you know, with meter, that they're no longer the same sort of spaces. So maybe we should go with marking. Of
Okay.
course, that involves Rob. But you know, we'll ask kindly.
But when you mark it, right, you actually could lose spacing, right, because you have to go by DOT's marking regulations.
We're too big right now, isn't that true?
Yeah, I think are you a 22?
I think so.
If you're 22, it's too big. Would you agree that 20 is standard? So I think 20 feet, I think is New York State standard.
Okay.
But let's check because it may not apply to a street parking. That might be lot parking. So we should double check that. You know, there's also probably going to be a future where special cameras are enforcing, to be honest. So this is way in the future.
Mhm.
Another reason to have the spaces, because when the car pulls in, the car pulls in. I talked earlier today about curb management. You're going to be facing curb management in the future, having FedEx, UPS, DoorDash have certain spots they can pull into. Another reason to have spaces painted and maybe even painted a different color. So it's designated for those
Mhm.
short-term services. So just food for thought.
Since we're talking about one of the things that you just said, you know, this is an asset, this is, you know, this costs this much. When thinking about that, and I've brought this up a million times, and I think we really should work on it as common council. When a developer proposes a project and they don't have adequate parking, they should be charged per spot that they're missing. And I know that Port Jefferson does this, and they charge about $6,000 per spot. We would be able to build more parking and solve a lot of our problems
Sure.
if we did that.
And it could be, which we're moving to is a parking fund or a parking,
I'd
whatever we call it.
really like
We
that.
have, we designate for that,
Yeah,
not general fund.
no,
Sounds good.
So eventually have like parking.
I would like that.
That's what pileup usually leads to if it's possible. Port
They're
Jefferson
doing
really
it
never had
across
that.
the river.
Where,
I think they're doing it in Catskill.
all right, you put in a multi-story lot.
Yeah, behind the courthouse. That's what it looks like, unless it's just all it's steel construction and it's gonna be a glass building. I don't know. I was over there this weekend and I was like, oh, that looks like a parking garage.
My understanding, unfortunately, is that there's no grant money for building parking.
No, there isn't.
We just got 24 million in Riverhead, 24 million. Did I send that to you?
From, as a grant?
Yeah.
From,
Federal New York State, Federal Department of, not transportation, I will get this for you. It is available.
Yeah.
We just got,
There's,
I mean, it's
I
not
think
just back here, it's the place for it. I mean,
could be there, or it could be down where, Kaz is, where the parking lot is full all the time for long-term parking. It's
yeah.
always full.
I've been saying where, you know, people-
Well, maybe,
No, I agree.
maybe we should talk to him about that.
But this, I mean,
Yeah.
centrality, this is
Fantastic.
for one, and we could do more interesting things here in terms of upper space and all that kind of stuff. And maybe, it's a lot of possibilities. I agree. I mean, that was the one that was identified, the space that was identified in the parking.
It was one of the ones.
Right.
But, I'm also thinking about 11 Warren again. There's gonna be a lot happening on that end of town that people aren't really thinking about.
We're thinking.
Well, I'm thinking about it. I don't know, yeah,
Boy, isn't there a hotel coming right there too?
yes. There's hotels, there's Kaz, which is going to be a huge project. I think there's also going to be housing there. I think there's also going to be a lot happening in that little area. Plus, hopefully, our grant money will come through for some of the things that we're doing on the waterfront, which will be a huge draw to people, and there's no place to park. So that's why I keep in my brain thinking about that as being a spot where we need more parking.
Mhm.
There's a lot happening there.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Well, right, that's a great, event space parking, but in terms of shopping parking, right, it would be back here, right?
right, but honestly, I don't see, as someone who works on Warren Street and sees what's actually happening there, I don't see that we need that much more parking for shopping, but we do need event
Yeah.
spaces, and we need also, if when we have elections, if there's ever an election again, we're going to need space for people to come and park from all over Columbia County. And we don't have it now.
Oh, you mean 11 Warren Street?
Yeah,
Yeah, early voting.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be problematic, I think. So
yeah,
that's why I keep saying, hey, let's put something down there. That makes a lot of sense to me. Either the gravel lot or, figure out how to get some money going toward building some kind of structure. Or, the other thing was, we get a little trolley and we take the trolley around and pick up people at all of the short-term parking lots all over and,
for events.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then they can, I don't know, just trying to be creative.
Right, I think you gotta find a trolley, because I think that went somewhere else, and I think it's still being used. We have two
Yeah,
trolleys.
I've looked into, electrical.
Electric trolley.
Yeah,
trolleys.
They're a
Not
couple
ridiculous.
$100,000. That's,
So there are grants for those too as well.
yeah,
But the multi-deck, I like to call it, instead of garages,
Yeah.
that process is 5 to 7 years. So it's something, if this
It's
committee
a
wants
long-
to start anything, you
Yeah.
should start that.
but that's why I keep saying, let's put together a fund. Let's start adding to this fund because it'll take us 5 to 7 years to get anywhere near that.
Right. And-
When you say management, curb management, when like UPS, things like that, so
Yeah.
you're not double parking?
Yeah,
Is that the
Yeah,
goal?
the whole idea of curb management being, turnover, designated handicap spots and special spots for, as you said, short-term on and off.
Hmm.
And those can also act as valet spaces sometimes, depending on what's in front of it. So during the day, we did this project in Fort Lee where during the day, it was for what we talked about, FedEx, UPS, and then during the night, there was a hotel there and they use it exclusively for valet space. So it can double or triple its usage. But what it's not is a regular space in some cases.
Yeah, gotcha.
that's a nice idea. We have to think about where those go, and we should probably talk to the business coalition about,
Mm.
how they would see that working, but I think that's a good idea. Anybody else got ideas or comments or questions? online? No?
Or you thinking about North Seventh too?
Yes, that's gonna be another problem area because of housing going in. But I think, was there some idea about
Definitely. We do a lot then, yeah.
next to firehouse? Yeah.
I mean, we already rent out I'd say about a quarter of it.
So that could be the valet that we're talking, if you're talking about the hotel, that's gonna be able to use it there too.
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Well, the negotiation, I don't know, really haven't begun, but the Poplar Factory people are willing to contribute to developing that property in exchange for, their use of part of it. So we'll see.
Okay. What about Galvin's project?
It's up to the IDA, not me.
Dominic, you're on that committee.
what's that? Meetings tomorrow, public hearings tomorrow. 9:30.
On that project?
Mhm.
But you said-
How many of these things do I
Hudson
have?
City Center. 9:30.
9:30 here?
On Hudson City Center.
Okay, got it,
Yeah.
got it.
Is that room 301?
All right.
You should have said 305 or something.
Oh, did I say 301? No, that's the sign. 301.
Was it? No, yes, that I moved again.
So where are you staying, Kevin?
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
What, 28 months?
Yeah.
Wait, it's officially.
You to Albany?
Well,